Welcome back. Now, I have been giving the order of topics in these videos a lot of thought, and one thing that keeps popping up in all of them is XY coordinates. So I figured I would do an overview of what they are and how they work in ExpressPCB Plus. Now, I might use a tool or two that I have not talked about, but I need to do that in order to demonstrate XY coordinates. So don't worry, I'll explain those tools or techniques in later videos. Now, some of you may be so familiar with CAD programs that you dream about placing things with XY coordinates. And for those of you who do, unfortunately, dream of such things, you can skip this video. Or you can watch it and chuckle at my attempts to explain the subject. But those of you who are new to the program or casual users, you might get a better insight as to what is going on and be able to use the program a little more efficiently. Now, I have used CAD for many years in my prior work as a broadcast engineer, and I found that knowing how to use XY coordinates when doing a drawing is a major help. Now, ExpressPCB Plus is basically a CAD program, and it keeps track of everything on the screen with XY coordinates. Here's your basic screen, and this is what you see with the default settings in ExpressPCB Plus. Now, you might have noticed that the colors on my screen are a little bit different than what is on your screen, and I'll explain why I changed them and how to do it in another video. First things first though, in order to select anything in ExpressPCB Plus, you have to use the Select tool. To select the Select tool, you can come up here to where it says Select on the toolbar, click it, your cursor will turn into an arrow like that, and also the Select button will be highlighted in green. Or you can use a keyboard shortcut. And that keyboard shortcut is, wait for it, the Escape key. Yes, the Escape key. Not the S key, the Escape key. The S key would make more sense. In ExpressPCB Classic, it is the S key. S is easy to remember, S for Select, but in ExpressPCB Plus, it is the Escape key. Now, I have seen other programs use Escape to activate the Select tool, so maybe it is a commonplace thing. It really doesn't matter. You're going to get used to it. Also, let's talk about navigating the screen before we get into XY coordinates. Now, there are several ways to move around the screen and zoom in and out. And I'm going to bring in a drawing so we have something to look at. Here's a drawing of a Heathkit frequency counter time-based select board that I did in order to troubleshoot some switching problems I was having with it. When I open the drawing, I see the entire board. Now, if I want to zoom in on a portion of the board, I can place my mouse cursor over the point where I want the zoom to start and use the mouse scroll wheel to zoom in or out like this. And the drawing will zoom in centered on where my mouse cursor is. Or I can come over here and use these buttons here, and I can zoom in with the plus, zoom out with the minus, or zoom to make the board fit the window like that. My other option is this drop-down menu here, and I can do a fit width, a fit height, or one of many pre-selected zoom levels like that. Now, say I've zoomed way into my drawing, so I'm going to zoom in with the scroll wheel like that. And now I want to see the entire drawing. So what I can do is I can do a zoom extents, meaning I can see the full drawing. And I can do that by either pressing the mouse scroll wheel switch or with the keyboard shortcut 0. Okay, let me zoom in again. Now, say I want to see what's up here, what's above that green line. I want to see the top of my board. Now, this is where ExpressPCB Classic is better. In Classic, I can click and hold down the mouse wheel and drag my drawing. In ExpressPCB Plus, clicking the wheel does a zoom extents. In ExpressPCB Plus, to pan your drawing, you can use the bars at the bottom of the screen or to the right of the screen, or you can use your keyboard and mouse. So if you hold down the Shift key, your cursor turns into this little hand, and then by pressing the left mouse button, I can grab my drawing and I can move it around this way. Now, personally, I prefer being able to use the mouse wheel. It's quicker, it's faster, and you don't have to use two hands to scroll your drawing. Maybe in a future version of ExpressPCB Plus, they'll give us the option as to what the mouse scroll wheel does. Either a zoom extents or allow you to pan the drawing. That would be nice. Okay, I'm going to lose this drawing. Now, as we mentioned before, the ribbon is up here with all of its selection and input boxes. On the left, we have the toolbar, and at the bottom, we have the mouse XY coordinates and the move over element XY coordinates, and these two cool looking gears that really don't seem to do anything. So when I say XY coordinates, I am referring to a place on the screen denoted by two numbers, an X or horizontal position, and a Y or vertical position. Now these numbers can be in inches, thou or thousandths of an inch, or millimeters. It depends on what system you are working in, and I will discuss how to set that in the next video. But for now, I will be using inches, and the basic concept is the same no matter what system you're using. So let's take a closer look at the origin point. In order for the XY numbers to have any meaning, they have to be referenced to a starting point. Now this point is called the origin point. ExpressPCB Plus always places the origin point in the lower left corner of the drawing. Now, you can change the location of the origin point and even the direction the numbers increment, but for now, we'll leave it in the lower left corner with the default settings. The way ExpressPCB Plus is set up is to have the values of the XY numbers increase when you move to the right on the X-axis and towards the top on the Y-axis. Let's zoom in on the origin point and get a closer look at it. If you look at the origin point symbol, you will see that it is centered on the lower left board corner. Now there are two arrows on the symbol. These arrows point to the direction that the XY number values will increase. The origin point has a numerical value of 0, 0, 0 inches X and 0 inches Y. Now if I move my cursor and put it right over the center of the origin point, you can see down at the bottom here where my mouse cursor coordinates are displayed that they read really close to 0, 0. Now they're off by a few thousandths of an inch because it's really hard to get the mouse to point to the exact 0, 0 point. Now when I move my mouse to the right, the first number increases in value. This is telling me the cursor's new X position. Now if I move up, the second number increases, telling me the cursor's Y position. And yes, you can have negative XY numbers, but we'll talk about that later. So that is XY coordinates in a nutshell. Now let's zoom out and take a look at the big picture. I can zoom out by pushing the mouse scroll wheel or with the keyboard shortcut 0. If I move my mouse to the upper left corner of the drawing, like this, and then I look down at the bottom at my mouse XY coordinates, it tells me I am at an X of minus 0.0037 and a Y of 2.5 inches, meaning my board is 2.5 inches tall. And there's one of those negative numbers that I talked about earlier. If I move my mouse to the upper right corner like this, let's see how close we can get it. That's good enough. And I look at the mouse XY coordinates, it tells me I am at an X of 3.7939 and a Y of 2.5037. And again, remember, it's off a few thousandths of an inch because it's really hard to place that cursor right on that board corner. But what it's telling me here is my board is 3.8 inches wide and 2.5 inches high. So if I need to place anything with accuracy anywhere on my board, I can type in an X value and a Y value, and it will move to that location with 1/10,000th of an inch accuracy. Now, when we're placing items on the board, most of us are going to use the snap feature for placing everything, and we'll talk about that later. But knowing how the XY works will help with the fine details. As an example of what I'm talking about, let's just use a simple pad in our drawing. So I'll come over here to hole or pad, and I'll select that. Come back here, and you'll notice that my cursor has now changed to a plus symbol with a little donut there. Now I could simply left click and place a pad, and that pad would have a 0.056 inch outer diameter and a 0.029 inch inner diameter, like it says up here. But I'm going to change it to something bigger, make it a little easier to see. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to select a 0.150 inch diameter pad with a 0.079 inch hole. Click on that, and I'm going to place it like right there. Now that I've placed that pad, note up here in the size and position box that I now have a set of XY coordinates. This is saying that the center of the pad is at an X of 1.100 inches and a Y of 1.800 inches. And again, if you look down at the mouse coordinates in the lower left, you'll notice that they don't match the XY coordinates up in the size and position box. And again, that is because it's hard to place your cursor exactly at that point. My pad snapped to one of those dots, and that's something we will get into in another video, the snap feature. You'll also notice that the move over element now has two numbers in it, and those reflect the same numbers that are up in the size and position box. Now I'm going to go to the select tool. I did that by pressing escape, and I'm going to grab the pad and watch what happens to the XY up in the size and position and the move over element numbers. If I come down here and I move my pad to here, you'll notice that the size and position box and the move over element are the same. And this is a handy feature, and we'll go into that more later on. But you can always tell where something is on the screen by looking at that move over element or up in the size and position. Now, say I want to put this pad in the exact center of my board. Well, I know my board is 3.8 inches wide and 2.5 inches high. So I'll divide both numbers by 2, and I get 1.9 inches for my X and 1.25 inches for my Y. So I'm going to come up to the size and position box like this. And I'm going to left click in there. And you'll see that I now have that little flashing bar. And I am going to change that to 1.9 inches. And the easiest way to do this that I have found, now I can do it this way. I can hold down the left mouse button, swipe it like that. I can move it with the arrow keys like that. But the easiest thing I found is just click in there, do a Control A. That highlights the whole thing. Type in 1.9. Now I'm going to move down to the Y box, but watch what happens to the pad when I click in the Y box. It immediately jumps to that 1.9 inches that I put in for the X value. Now I'm going to do a Control A. I'm going to type in 1.25 and I'm going to hit enter. And there's my pad in the exact center of my board. The other cool thing that I just sort of noticed is that a little box popped up here, and it's saying that my 1.25 inches in the Y is 31.75 millimeters or 3.175 centimeters, 1.250 inches or 1,250 thousandths. I guess that can be useful. Now, one thing you might have noticed when I entered values into those two boxes is I did not have to type 1.900 space IN when I put the X in. I just typed 1.9. If I wanted to be 1.925, I would have typed 1.925. But I don't have to put in that IN for inches. You don't have to do that for anything because ExpressPCB Plus remembers what you're working in, and it puts it in automatically, whether you're working in inches, millimeters, or thousandths. Now that's a handy feature to have. All right, let's go down here real fast. And let's look at our mouse XY coordinates again one more time, and the move over element. And you'll note that only the mouse coordinates have any values in them. The move over element does not. And that's because my mouse is not over anything that can be displayed in the move over element. But as I move my mouse closer and I highlight that pad, now you'll note that move over element has the numbers in it. So just for the heck of it, let's place a component on our drawing. I'll go over here to Part, More Parts in Library, and I'm already on capacitors, so I'm going to select this 1.2 inch axial capacitor right here. So I'll double click on it, and I'll bring it into our drawing. Now, just like our drawing has an origin point, parts do too. For this cap, it is the plusative pad. Note that while my mouse cursor is not on the positive pad, the move over element XY coordinates are showing you exactly where the positive pad is located. Also, with the capacitor highlighted, the size and position box displays the XY of the positive pad or origin point of the part, plus some other numbers. You can ignore the other numbers as they are meaningless to the placement of the part. And I'll place the part by left-clicking, and I'll put it right here on that grid mark. Now, if the cap is deselected and I hover over the positive pad, the move over element displays tells me where the pad is. If I go to the negative pad like this, the move over element displays tell me where the negative pad is in XY. Now, if I hover over any of the lines, let me do that and then that, and select a line by itself. The move over element gives me information, but I will tell you what that means in another video. And also, if you look up in the size and position box, you're going to see a bunch of other numbers too. And we'll go over all that when we design our own custom components. Now, if I want to place this part in an exact spot, I can come over here and I can select the positive pad like that. I can come up here and I can say I would like this at 2 inches in the X. Oops. Try it that way. 2 inches in the X and 1.9 in the Y. But let's change that as well. Let's say we want it at 1. Like that. Now I'll hit enter. And my part jumps to 2 inches in the X and 1 inch in the Y. So once again, if you need to place something exactly in your drawing, you can always use XY coordinates to get it exactly where you want it to be. Okay, I think that covers basic XY coordinates in Express PCB+. Now I hope some of this was useful to you. In the next video, we're going to discuss the grid and snap settings. We'll see you then.